Hello, and welcome back to the casual voice of the Rift, where we take all the biggest news on a weekly basis from the pro scene in LCS, NA, EU, and OGN, and we try to package it nicely and beautifully for the casual viewer, as opposed from hearing Monte Cristo talking in, sounds like he's giving a presentation at MIT, to Freak talking about shit that I don't even care about, and everyone else. You're going to hear from a few retards, and we're going to try to package it up for you nicely. So, we got another good show. We got some good topics. Week 1 of the LCS Superweek is in the books, and it was fairly exciting. I thought there were some good moments. I thought there were some bad moments, and overall I was relatively pleased. We also had the OGN finals on the books, so we'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. But to get started, we'd like to take our week in solo queue, in our picks and bans, and our champion selections, and let you guys know what we are playing currently. So the week started good for me. I climbed like 2 divisions in a row. I think I won like 14 games straight. I was playing mid lane, mostly Orianna, Ziggs, a little bit of Lulu, but those were my primary picks. And then at the tail end of the week, my last 2 days, I think I lost like 10 straight. So lost 1 division and just played really poopy. But overall, feeling pretty strong. Playing some mid lane, a little bit of top lane, but yeah. So the week went okay for me. Andy P, what's up in your world?
I had a pretty slow week. I did not play very much. I was busy working and hanging out with friends and, the usual. So I didn't get as many games as usual, but I did get promoted. So
Nice.
that was good.
Congrats.
That was pretty cool. I've been playing quite a bit of mid lane, trying to stick with some of the more mage style picks. Orianna, played a little bit of Ziggs. I've played a couple Kassadin games. But so I don't know. It didn't go too good for me. I got some pretty shitty players. We had no strategy in any of the games, no objective control, just straight up whoever got the most kills was the winner. So it was kind of an annoying week for me, but that's all right.
Happens.
Got some good games pro, so that kind of made up for it.
True. Oaf, what about you?
I had an okay week. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I've been playing a lot of Lee Sin jungle. Trying to get better with that. But, I mean, overall, it wasn't too bad. Had a couple 4v5 games, so that was annoying. But I think I went like 60% for the week, so.
Nice.
I mean, not shitty, but for a bunch of 4v5s, wasn't bad either, so. But yeah, playing a lot of jungle. I played mostly Lee Sin and Elise last like 4 or 5 days.
Nice.
Not bad at all.
Okay, good. So let's kick it off with NA LCS Week 1. I want to kind of go over your guys' impressions of how the week went. Let's do a brief for anyone that isn't following closely. I'll go through the standings briefly. We had some pretty impressive performances, and then we had some mediocre performances. But the standings as of today, LMQ, the new Chinese challenger team that moved to NA just during the last split. They've been here a few months. They just terrorized the challenger scene. Came into Super Week 1 and won 4 straight. They are the only team that went undefeated. A lot of people say that they played the bottom tier of the LCS. They played the bottom 4 teams, but I don't think people can talk shit because some of those bottom 4 teams beat the top 4 teams. So LMQ, extremely impressive. Dignitas and TSM take up the second and tied for second place with 3-1 records. Both of them look pretty good. I think people would argue that Dig looks a little bit more impressive. TSM a little bit shaky, but they still got the second place record. The middle of the pack with a 2-2 record is CLG and Cloud9. Both of them, I think, came out strong and kind of tapered off a little bit. And then we have Curse and Complexity with 1-3 records, and to round out the bottom is EG with a 0-4 record. Not the best way to start it. As far as impressions go on the first week, like I was super stoked to be back. I was super stoked that we had a lot of games, and I was excited to see. Granted, all these roster changes for NA teams, I thought it was going to be a pretty exciting week. Some of the first games were really exciting for me, but as I continued to watch, I just felt like everyone is playing like super safe, and I think that's typical of like the week one back in the LCS. People don't want to take chances, they don't want to drop games because of stupid decisions and stuff like that. But I don't know. As the games wore on, I was just like, okay, that's cool. It went okay. What did you guys? We'll start with Oaf. How'd you feel about Super Week?
I don't know. I liked it. I think LMQ came out just ready to play. I mean, they didn't have any roster changes, didn't do all-stars, anything like that, so I think they were more ready than pretty much any other team. And Dignitas looked fucking great for having 2 roster changes, and yeah, they looked fantastic. Shifter had some huge games. But other than that, I mean, no one else really impressed me. I didn't think frickin' TSM looked very good at all. Even though they went 3-1, I don't think they did it impressively. And then everyone else after that, I wasn't surprised except for Cloud9. I thought everyone else was going to be really where they're supposed to be. EG at the bottom, freaking Curse down there, Complexity down there. But Cloud9 surprised me, losing a bunch of games to Complexity for that matter. Not a good start at all for them. Other than that, I was fine with how it turned out. I was a little surprised LMQ killed everyone like that, though. We'll say that.
Okay.
I was pretty surprised. Dignitas, though, I was not surprised. They looked phenomenal. I thought they were going to look that way. So.
Okay. Andy P?
It went as I expected, other than I thought Cloud9 would be where Dignitas is. So, LMQ came out strong. The thing I think that made them so much stronger, or at least appear so much stronger, is they didn't switch up any of their picks. They didn't switch up any of their roster. They played the same game that they played in all of Challenger. They got LeBlanc, they got Nidalee, they got, the same picks as they always get. Same tanky top meta, same, all the same stuff. So they just kind of went in, routine, controlled objectives, won their lanes, and it was just a clean, simple win every game. Dignitas surprised me. I didn't think they would do as well as they did. For some reason, with their lanes now winning, it makes Crumbs look super badass and makes him look way better than I think he is. But yeah, they looked really good. I think TSM looks okay. They won, in my opinion, just off of, being TSM. They have Turtle, they have Beerson, they have Dyrus. They have experienced players that are all going to be stable and consistent. And then Cloud9, I don't know what was going on with them, but they lost some games they shouldn't have lost. The games they did win, it was either super convincing or it was like, could go either way. It was a swing game. So they were really confusing. And then the bottom is exactly as I expected it to be. I thought EG would go 0-4. In my opinion, Complexity should have went 0-4. Cloud9 should have beat them, but and then the other Curse, just as good as I expected them to be. And then CLG was kind of that team that could go either way. I think Seraph had a rough time, but we can talk about that later. So.
Okay. So let's kind of, I want to dig in next to kind of the, roster changes and how they worked for some of the top teams and their roster changes. But let's kind of go down the list and talk about I want to talk kind of about each team's performance instead. So let's start from the top with LMQ. obviously impressive. 4-0 is impressive for any team to pull off in the LCS, which I think has come up in skill level quite a bit. I think these team mix-ups have been good. I think the overall level of skill, which in my opinion, like even some of the lower teams, like EG going 0-4, they put up some relatively impressive fights. So I feel like the level of these teams has come up a little bit. But for LMQ, I think obviously the most impressive in the Superweek MVP was Zhao Zhao. I mean, the kid is ridiculous. He never loses lane. He's strong on all his picks. He's obviously an assassin. Like, why people let him play LeBlanc is beyond me. And then Vasily. I mean, the kid's a beast. He also doesn't drop lane. Is hardly ever down on CS. He's got a good champ pool. I mean, they're definitely a strong team. But I want to pose a question. I'll give this one to Andy P. If let's say you're on one of these top teams and you're going in to play LMQ next week, what is your strategy as far as picks and bans go? Do you target Zhao Zhao and try to keep him off assassins and try to maybe first pick an ad carry away from Vasily, or what do you think teams need to do to adapt to them?
Well, it depends on what team you are, but I think for, let's say, Cloud9, I think their lanes are all a bit weaker, and I think they win off of strategy. So giving them something like LeBlanc that can shit on high in lane and that can just destroy him is a terrible strategy. Give him the Nidalee or give him one of the mage picks. But I think ignore everyone except for, I would target Zhao Zhao and I would target Vasily. So you get rid of the one ad carry you're most scared of, either Lucian or Twitch, or you get rid of LeBlanc and Nidalee. So you either give them the Nidalee and then you take the Lucian Twitch, or you give them the Nidalee and you take away Lucian Twitch and LeBlanc. Because those are the two that wreak havoc. It's never Ackerman doesn't ever curb stomp his lane. Their jungler he's consistent, but he never does anything that he's not like Medios where he carries the team. And same thing with their support is not what makes Vasily strong. Vasily is just mechanically ridiculous. So I think if you just target, there's those 4 bans are, in my opinion, the most important. You pick the 3 that you're most scared of, and you target those, and then you adapt in the future. But if you're looking to win this very next game, take away Zhao Zhao's top 3 played champions and camp him, and I think you could probably make something happen at least.
Okay. Let's move on to Dignitas, going 3-1 in Superweek. A lot of people say they have probably some of the strongest lanes in NA across the board, top, mid, and even their bottom lane is in contention for obviously top 3. I don't know if they're the best, but they're obviously strong. Oph, what do you think about Dig's overall performance? What worked for them? What did they do to dismantle some of these top teams? What did you think?
They're playing as a team is their main thing. Like, that's one thing Coast always had trouble with. They would never do early objectives. They would just do 25-minute laning phase and that would be it. But
yeah, they felt like a solo queue team.
Exactly. But now Zion Spartan and Shifter coming over, I don't know, they're playing like a team. I mean, frickin' Shifter is dominating mid lane. Frickin' 2 games on Lulu, KDA of 20. 1 game on LeBlanc, 19 KDA. I mean,
it's insane.
He's absolutely dominating everyone. But then, Crumbs and I'm a Cutie Pie and Kiwi Kid, they're right there. Like, they're helping with everything. I mean, they're all playing really, really well. Their rotations are good, though. One thing I like about them is they're playing like Cloud9 did, but with strong laning. Like, where Cloud9 has always been weaker laning and great rotations, Dignitas is like the best of both worlds right now. They're freaking, I don't know. Their skirmishes look phenomenal, and they're catching people out, and then they're making something of it. They're not just taking the kill and walking away. They're taking a tower and dragon and then walking away. Like, I don't know. They were impressive to me. I mean, Shifter's ability to pick apart everyone in the mid lane was impressive.
Yeah, he's definitely a beast. I think they after a couple of their games, they played some recaps with their comms online, and you could hear them, especially during team fights and even like a couple of dragon fights. Like
Yeah.
they're pretty. You can hear everyone's voice coming through, and they all seem to be on the same page as far as who they're targeting, what their positioning needs to be. It sounded pretty clear and concise, which is good, and it's a good thing they're being vocal because they need to be.
Well, that's one thing I was. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, however, their lanes look really, 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 really strong. Shifter and Zion are doing really well, and their bottom lane's always been pretty consistent. The one thing I will say is their team fighting looks good, and their overall teamwork together looks good. But I do think they need to work on some of their calls. Like, for instance, when they called that Baron and almost threw the whole game.
Yeah.
I forget to which team it was, but they made a couple of those where it was like on the brink of completely losing, and even afterwards Zion was like, if we would have just made better decisions, we would have ended the game 25 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
But instead, it was an hour-long game that we had control of the whole time.
Sure.
So they look good, and their synergy looks pretty good. They just need to work on what's the right call and what's the wrong call.
The funny thing about their laning phase is Zion Spartan's the lowest KDA on their whole team right now. He's only at a 2.6. He had a horrible game on Mundo, and then his Jax game, I think he went like 9 kills, 7 deaths, though. So, like, I think it's Shifter is just stepping up. Like, he never had a vocal role on Coast, and I think he is, like, expressing the fact that he wants to call some shots now, and it's working for him. So he's always been a good solo queue player, so he knows what to do. I just think he had the wrong guidance on his last team, and so he's making it work now.
Well, yeah, and to comment on Zion's KDA, I think he's kind of becoming the sacrificial lamb for Shifter.
He's
like, I'm going to kill myself so that Shifter can pick up 4 kills.
Smart.
He's playing well. And it might not look like he's doing well, but he's finally playing the top lane role.
Yeah.
Before he was playing the Lee Sin every game and trying to carry it. Now he doesn't have to do that. So
yeah. No, their first game, I mean, without Zion sacrificing, there would have been no way for Shifter to get a penta. And he pented on the first game into the split. So, I mean, he went 15-0 on LeBlanc. So, you don't get much better than that, So the team's working really well. I like how they look.
Broken Shard was Broken Shard, I think, is nice enough to give him that penta.
Well, he stayed on Fountain. He just, allowed him the chance.
Yeah, he walked to the front of the Fountain.
Yeah.
So, but it's impressive. I mean, the kid's playing like a monster. So, yeah, I see nothing but good things out of them. And as they kind of play these games to get used to the teams, I think they'll do better and better. So, next in line, we'll talk about TSM. They had 2 pretty monstrous roster changes, with Oddone stepping down and Amazing from EU coming in, and then them releasing X Special to Curse and going with Glebe, which I think is his official name change now, by the way. It's not Glebe Glarbu. Thank God.
Glarbu.
But, I was, quite frankly, really nervous for TSM after I saw their first game. I mean, they looked shaky as hell. For me, I think it might have been nerves because of his first LCS game, but Glebe in his game 1, I think landed maybe 1 of 100 hooks that he threw out on Thresh. I thought he just was not looking very strong. The other thing, Amazing got completely banned out by C9 in game 1. They banned all his top champions, and then Meteos first picked Lee Sin straight from him. And he ended up on Xin Zhao, which didn't look bad, but, I mean, he's such a one-sided champion that it's not going to work.
Well, it didn't look bad, but it did not look good.
It didn't look good, so...
I mean, he had a freaking 1.3 KDA that game, so he didn't make the same impact for sure.
Agreed. I think it looks like Bjergsen is trying to step onto some of these more farm-heavy and support-type mid laners, and for me, I just don't know if that's the right choice. Him playing Lulu and champions like that, I mean, it's all fine and dandy, but that's just not where the kid is talented. It's not where he shines.
What happens when you change the summoner spells completely to null assassins?
Yeah, you could make that argument, but then, I mean, look at LeBlanc, look at Cassidon, look
No,
at
I agree.
there's still assassin champions out there that are
Well,
annihilating.
I mean, he pulled Cassidon and Syndra, so he played like heavy single target burst champions. But like, I think that he needs to be getting on his LeBlanc, Nidalee, and Zed. Zed's not pulled much anymore, but he's so good on Zed that it's still a good champion. He
Sure.
didn't get nerfed into the ground or anything, and so.
And I will say, with the amount of Lulu fucking tops, you can pull Zed now.
Yeah.
Lulu and Rise, you can pull Zed, and it can be really effective. So.
True.
If
Well,
there's a
that's
time
not-
to do it, it's probably now. So.
That's his best champion, and you just massacre mages with Zed. Like, just destroy pretty much the entire meta of right now can be beat by Zed, except for maybe LeBlanc.
Well, the good
And
thing,
that's still a very big toss-up. Like,
yeah, the good thing that TSM goes, I don't know if you saw it in all 4 of their games. Bjergsen is always last pick. They save mid pick till last for Bjergsen
Always.
every game. So he has the ability to
do it.
usually counterpick or do whatever he wants and know what his mid lane is going to be. So,
Yeah.
you
He
know,
gets the matchup he wants every game, which is, I mean, that's their best strategy. He's the one who's going to carry a game
yeah,
more than anyone else. So smart by them.
it is.
For sure.
So I think they still got some synergy stuff to work on. I think they still have they got a lot of work to do. I think there's a lot of teams that have a lot of work to do. But for me, I mean, their performance was good. It wasn't great.
No,
I think Amazing looks good. He needs to expand a little bit, but mechanically he looks really solid.
He's impressive. Yeah.
Glebe looks like complete garbage though.
I don't think that's true. He
I
had
think he looks bad.
one good showing on Thresh where he was hitting versus EG. He hit like every freaking hook.
But if you compare him to Xpecial, he looks like garbage. Like
Yeah.
Xpecial, every
Not
game he got
this
Thresh looked good.
This split though, Curse looks like piss.
Yeah.
So,
Well, they're back.
I'm comparing this split though. Xpecial and Glebe are like the exact same support during this split. I think.
We'll see. I mean, I just don't see. He's going to take a little time to get used to things, and we'll see how that goes. But I don't think one could make an argument that their bottom lane is less impressive than it has been in past. So, moving on, we have Cloud9 at 2-2. They don't have any roster changes. They do have High coming off of injury. I know they only had about a week and a half to get back in to scrimming with him instead of Link. I mean, High looks shaky. I think he got his blessed Soraka pick, and he got shit on in lane. There's no doubt about that, and it didn't do a whole lot. I think the biggest thing for me, Cloud9 has this one strategy now that they play every time, and for me, every single one of their games was so predictable, and they didn't play anything. They didn't take any risks. They played so safe. They they play the same lane setups. Medios does the same, overall routes. He's up in the top lane by, level 8. It's just, they take a dragon at whatever it is, 11 minutes or something. I mean, every game they play this one style of play, and I don't know if that's, I'm sure that they'll change it up, but for me, their games were, they were pretty boring, and I didn't think that they looked Cloud9 level. So what did you guys think? Andy, you go first.
Well, Cloud9 always had the edge strategically. They were always pushing the boundaries when it came to strategy, whether it was Nasus jungle last season and just pushing down towers at 2 minutes and no one understood. And they've always been ahead of the game on strategy, and it feels like to me they have not. To me, it looks like they don't have time to come up with any new strategy, and they only had a week with High before this, this split started. And I think it's fair that they didn't have time, and I mean, I think that they'll start to look better as the weeks go on, and I think they'll come back to, they'll make some new stuff, and they'll have more time to strategize. But for this week specifically, they didn't have time to do anything new. They didn't have time to change anything, so they went to their same old picks. They played as safe as they could. They tried to take objectives when they thought it was completely 100% safe. They never tried to push any boundaries, and that's why they look not as impressive.
Oh, what do you think?
Their picks were too telegraphed. They did the same thing every freaking game. Meteos wanted Kha'Zix. He went 1.6 KDA on it. Played like shit. Frickin' Sneaky is sneaky. He played okay, but he's not like carry. Lemonation's still on Morgana and Zyra. He didn't really do anything impressive. And then High looked super shaky. Like he just didn't play during his medical leave. Like, I don't know. They were not same Cloud9 at all, though. They were nowhere near it. So they have a lot of work to do to come back. But I think the Kha'Zix pick needs to stop from Meteos. He needs to get back on Elise all the time. Or even, like, back to last season, he played a shit ton of Elise in. I mean, I don't see him on that too often anymore.
He
So I don't.
He pulled it a little bit this week.
Yeah, but he did good on it compared to his Kha'Zix. Let's see, he went 8.3 KDA on Lee Sin compared to the 1.6 on Kha'Zix. Like, so I don't know. Their picks are just way too telegraphed. Same thing over and over. Balls went Trundle 3 games out of 4, and he went Shyvana on the 4th one. So, I mean, switching it up more. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe go back to some of your last season picks. Throw balls on Rumble and try that out. High needs to get off of Soraka for one.
Well, it's getting nerfed next batch anyway.
Yeah, he'll be done with that. Now C9 dropped 2 games, but one game that they dropped was to Complexity, which is a brand new LCS team, and a lot of people are arguing that they're on the same level as like EG. I mean, they're theoretically at the bottom of the LCS tier, and they pulled a game off Cloud9. I mean, what did you see? I mean, what did Cloud9 do because quite frankly, it let Complexity beat them. It wasn't like that's how I saw it. So what do you guys think?
I think at that play, I want to say they were like level 5, but they gave a triple kill to Robert X.
To Robert, yeah.
At like level 5 or something, and since that point, they looked shaky. They weren't trying to camp bottom lane to get him, to get sneaky ahead. They weren't sitting in a different lane. They just continued with the same strategy of let's play safe and we'll just farm up and it'll be fine. You can't play safe and farm up when someone's fed. Like, you have to force objectives, or you have to force another lane to fall behind, or you have to force something. Like, you can't just go into a head-to-head at 20 minutes when Robert X. Lee has an extra item over Sneaky, and then all of the other lanes just run even. Like, that's not the way it works. So, for me, it was just like that same strategy of let's play safe, get the dragon when we can, get a tower when we can, but if nothing's happening, we'll just sit here. Like, you can't do that when you already failed that plan. Like, you gotta switch it up. You gotta be on your toes, ready to react. Even if it's a bad team, you still have to react to them playing better than you. Like, so for me, it wasn't them reacting.
They also they made a couple of plays that I just isn't typical of Cloud9. That triple kill in the bot lane, even though I must say Robert X. Lee is playing pretty well. That triple kill in the bot lane, balls on Trundle in the top lane, tries to dive West Rice under inhib turret, gets chased out, and then tries to TP away and just hands the kill over to West Rice, even though Shyvana probably would have chased him down and got the kill anyways. He
shouldn't have even TP'd. He just should have fought.
He should have just saved it, either fought or tried to bail.
Yeah,
and it just didn't look. Yeah, I mean, it looked like they underestimated them first off, and then just kind of sloppily went through the game a little bit. So,
Like
everyone's
they're fed up trying to play at that point. Like, that was towards the end of the week. And they were like, it looked like they just gave up on the week. They were like, all right, we just want to go home as fast as possible so we can practice. Because they looked horrible. Like, that triple kill, they never do that. They always know exactly what they can do, how much damage they can do. They go into fight knowing how much damage they can take. And they looked like they didn't know any of that. They just, like, walked in and got obliterated. And it just,
I will say it was a great counter gank out of complexity, but
Yeah.
at the same time, that does not excuse a triple.
Yeah.
Like Meteos should have just like either went in and had Sneaky and Lemon bail or something. Like there's no reason why 3 kills should have happened right there. Like they
Yeah.
kept that fight going almost on purpose. Like we can turn it, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
Was it 3? It was 3 for nothing, right? Did
Yeah.
they even get one off that?
Yeah, I don't think they got one at all.
0.
Well, that's the thing too, though. Is like Cloud9's never like that. They at least go like even, maybe a little bit under in a fight. They'll go like 3 for 2. They don't just hand over a triple kill.
No, that never happens.
So it just looked like they didn't even know what they were doing. It doesn't seem like Cloud9 to me, and it's freaking me out a little bit.
Well, it was the I think lack of practice. I mean, High having his lung collapse is obviously terrible.
That's an issue. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not necessarily their fault, so.
Who the fuck is looking at you guys?
Tutor
is here.
Tell her to get away. Okay. So I'm pretty sure. Yeah, we're still recording. Okay. So let's see. So we kind of wrapped up Cloud9 and their whatever week. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of people, I thought for sure that they were going to wipe the floor with everyone given how they did internationally. But, it is what it is. Everyone's entitled to shaky games, and, week 1 of LCS is always kind of up in the air. So moving on into one of our next roster change teams is CLG. Also going 2-2. They had some moments of brilliance and some moments of terrible, in my opinion. Everyone was super jacked up on Seraph, the new Korean top laner who came in. He's only had a couple weeks of practice with the team. For one of the weeks, Doublelift and Link were in Paris, so they've had about probably 8 or 9 days of scrims together as a team. There's nobody that can deny that Seraph looked average at best. He made some interesting picks. He played Aurelia quite a bit. He got a Jax game. His very first game on Shyvana, which I thought was his best game overall. They looked pretty good. Their bot lane still looks really, really strong, and Link is playing exceptional in my opinion. I think they have some serious. I think their communication is going to be their biggest issue, because I heard an interview with Afromoo after one of the games that, you can listen to their comms, and they all talk really, really fast when they're making calls. Doublelift is making calls, Link is making calls, and they're talking really fast. And he said it's difficult for Seraph to kind of keep up with those calls. And Afromoo kind of almost has to translate it down for him a little bit. But some of his teleports were just terrible. Some of his re-engages were not good. He died in every single team fight, which is fine out of a top laner, but you have to get something for it. And I just, I felt like the nerves got the best of him for sure. So what was your guys' opinion on CLG? If you can go first.
They looked pretty good. I mean, Seraph was surprisingly bad, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know. He didn't show. His teleports were kind of useless, in my opinion. They didn't do much. He had a couple okay ones, but overall as a team, they just aren't looking super hot. I mean,
Okay.
Their shot calling looks very, very poor. They just all look shaky. Like you said, they only had a week of practice, but still, I don't know. It's probably that. Like, Cloud9 only had a week of practice after All-Stars 2, and they looked like crap too. So, it's probably that. I think they'll get better throughout the season. I don't think they'll be as low as they are. But just off of this first week, they didn't look very good. If they continue playing the way they're playing now, they'll be low in the standings. Because everyone's going to get better, and everyone's already better than them right now.
Fair
there's
enough.
only a couple teams that, I don't know, they didn't look too good.
NDP, do you think? What's your opinion, and do you think for Super Week, Seraph was their weakest link by far?
First off, chat is saying you should increase the volume a little on the mics if you can. But
All right.
to keep going, Seraph, I think it wasn't his mechanics, it wasn't his picks. Like, for instance, he had won a game where he looked pretty good. Mechanically, he looked pretty good on it. His Shyvana game, he looked down at any point in the game. And he just was not getting gold. He was forcing a couple things, like they got a kill or two, they got a tower. But then there was a play where they took a 4v2 and they lost. Like, they were just... He was making poor decisions, but I think overall he'll improve, and as his English improves, and as he can kind of talk with them and get better with them as a team whole, I think his mechanics and stuff are there. You can see that in a lot of his plays, but overall, right now, he's just making some poor decisions, and that might be like what you were saying, their communication not being very strong. But I think it'll improve, and I think Double Lift and Aframu look great. I think Dexter looks mechanically fantastic. He's always looks good. And Link is actually playing much better than... I think since All-Stars, he's been playing really well. He played great in All-Stars. He held his own. He got that international experience. And then he came back. He's been doing really well, holding his own, usually a CS lead. I think the games they're losing are just their communication not being very strong, or their strategy not being very strong. So we'll see how it keeps going, but I think they'll improve, and I think as Seraph continues to play with them and continues to learn how they talk and how their communication goes, I think they'll definitely improve overall.
Okay. Good things. Yeah, I think it could have been a lot worse for them, but it could have got a lot better.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's I think it's week one jitters for everyone. So
yeah.
Let's move down to Curse. They bring in a special for the bot lane. You got to say the bot lane performed well. Cop is playing really exceptional. I still think X-Special's doing well. A lot of his engages are still pretty solid. For me, I feel like they're just getting beat elsewhere. I mean, I don't feel like Dominate's not doing anything spectacular on Evelyn. He's putting a lot of priority on Evelyn, but he's not making it work. What do you think it is? What do you think it is about Curse that is just not clicking?
Their solo lanes aren't very good.
Okay.
Quas and Voyboy just aren't very good in their lanes. Voyboy should be top lane still, and I don't think Quas can play top lane as good as any North American top laner right now. Like, maybe other than, I don't know, Wes Rice and him would go head-to-head a little bit, but, like, put him against Balls, Dyrus, frickin' Zion Spartan, I think he gets shit on. And same goes to Voyboy, though. You put him up against Bjergsen and Shifter and all these other mid laners in NA, and he gets shit on. I just don't think their solo lanes are good. Their bottom lane's doing fine, and Dominate does okay. He has okay buff control and okay rotations, but just overall, their solo lanes just aren't very good, in my opinion. I don't know.
So yeah, I think their bottom lane's fine. Like, Special has improved Cop, I think, to a pretty good point. I think Quas is doing okay, but the main thing with Quas for me is just his build path. Like, he played Mundo a couple times, and he's the only person I've ever seen like build Warmogs that early in the game. It's just
First item.
I mean, stacking health on Mundo's not bad, but when you have, for instance, a Shyvana with Blade of the Ruined King, stacking health is actually the opposite of what you want to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just like some of those decisions are bad. In my opinion, the person who looks best on the team is Voyboy. I don't even think Voyboy is very good. I think his picks are pretty bad, but the game where he pulled Yasuo, and he went huge. He changed team fights. He did really well.
Oh, okay.
And I think he looks the best out of all of them, but I also think that that's not saying much. Like, if Voyboy is the one who looks best on your team, you guys probably aren't going to do too great, because even when he looks great, it's like Bjergsen on a normal game, or like Shifter on his average game. Like, he's never looked incredible to where he's just gonna win you the game. He looks good enough to keep you in the game, which
Even
is
his
the problem right now.
even as Yasuo, though, he played it 2 times. He only had a 2 KDA, 360 gold per minute. Like, Zhao Weijiao's average was 440. So, like...
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. But
He's
he
not
looks the
playing great.
best, and that's the weird part. Is that
Well, Koff looks the best on their team for sure, and that's more because of X Special supporting him. But I don't know, Voyboy is just not. I don't think he's a contender in the pro scene right now. Not in the mid lane, no
and
way.
I think looking at it on paper is deceptive though, because like we said earlier, like Zion Spartan only had like a 2.4 KDA or whatever, but he's killing it. Like same thing with Voyboy. Like the fights that they did win, it was because Voyboy locked down 4 of them with Yasuo and got everyone to 10% health. Like he's doing well. He doesn't look.
Yeah.
I'm not saying he looks as good as Shifter. He doesn't look as good as Bjergsen, but at the same time, he is, as Curse goes, he's probably the thing that's keeping him in it right now. But I do think this week was not a very impressive one for Curse at all. Like they're gonna have to change some stuff to try to get back in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know what exactly it is, but there's something that's just not. I don't know. I don't know if it's a synergy thing or if it's a people just not stepping up. I feel like everyone's playing okay. I feel like right now their Leakus Wink is dominate for me. Like, Quas is doing okay. He's always been. I'm going to build every champion I play, I build offensively. I mean, he builds, like, straight offense on Renekton. He builds, he did the health stack. He's always got the weirdest build paths.
Yeah.
But he did okay. He was coming in and actually getting kills when he played Renekton, but he obviously never made it out of the fights because he lacked tankiness. But
yeah,
I don't know what it is. I feel like Voyboy was playing reactively and actually playing reactively really well in the mid lane, but that's not enough to win games. Like, you can play reactively well all you want, but it's never going to push you forward to actually win.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I agree with Oaf. Like, the lanes always do fine. They usually hold their own, but they never win lane.
Yeah.
And it's not like their team has better strategy than other teams. It's not like they have better team synergy than other teams. So when you go even, and then you're facing a team like Cloud9 or you're facing a team like LMQ, they're going to beat you if they're even. Like, you're not going to win. So they're lacking the lanes to win them the game. They're lacking the team synergy to win them the game. They're just even on all points. So, like, these teams that excel at one of those specific points can win because they beat them in one of the two. Like, Curse never wins in either. So
well, they don't. They're just not playing well as a team. Like the health stack first. That's to try and win his lane out. That's to try and survive lane and just become big late game. But, like, that's not for the team. Like, he's going to get absolutely obliterated in mid-game fights now because he doesn't have any freaking armor or any defensive stats. He just has health. And he's going to get that freaking burnt. So, I mean, they just aren't playing good as a team. And, I mean, like he said, I mean, they do fine in laning phase, but they come out of it even and they're going to lose. So, they need to start playing the way Dominate should be playing, and it's just like hardcore mid-game skirmishes where they just come up with crazy freaking pathing and all this different stuff. Like, they're a brawling team, they're not a strategic team, and that's how they should be playing it, in my opinion. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last two to round out the bottom is Complexity going 1 and 3 and EG going 0 and 4. Complexity surprised everyone pulling a game off Cloud9, which was pretty crazy. We talked about it a little bit already. They give up a triple kill in the bot lane to Robert X. Lee. He continues the snowball for most of the game. Looks like, Balls is getting a little crazy in the top lane, giving up a crazy dive to West Rice. I think C9 just got a little bit lazy and Complexity took advantage of it, and they actually did okay. You can see they're obviously nervous. I don't know if you guys saw the Broken Shard gank mid lane on Elise. He got the kill and barely made it out. Like, he faltered a couple of his spells coming around the mid lane river. I mean, you could tell that they're nervous, and rightfully so. They're playing the best team in the league, arguably. But, I think it was just Cloud9 laziness. I don't think they were trying to do anything crazy, and I think they just got a little bit comfortable. So,
well, one thing I will say about Complexity is I'm really happy with how humble they're being. Even in their interviews or in the little intro videos or whatever before the games, like, they were even saying, we have a long road ahead of us. We're not going to come out and just stomp. We're not going to come out and be the top team. Like, we're not expecting that. We're excited to be here, and we're going to continue to work hard to try and stay here. Like, and I think that's really cool to come out and not be, you know, well, we made it in, we made it this far, we're going to shit on everyone. Like, they're just happy to be in there, and they're happy to be recognized as players that are good enough to be there. And I think, you know, Cloud9 looks shaky, but even to beat someone like Cloud9 when they're nervous, it's still a win for Complexity, and I think it'll give them a bit of momentum and give them some, you know, some pride, and now they can walk away and say, see, we have the potential to beat these teams, and we can do this. And I think I'm looking forward to see them play more games, because I think that a few of their lanes are actually really good. Prawley's really good, and Robert X. Lee is really good. And if they can step up and build their team strategy, I think that they can actually go somewhere. So I'm excited for them.
Yeah.
So
I think that, I mean, if nothing else, that's going to be just a massive confidence boost for next week.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, it's, you know, they get to feel like, hey, I mean, if these top teams falter a little bit, we can actually take games off these guys. So that's going to do nothing but good things. But I think, talking on confidence, I mean, EG's confidence has got to be in the dirt. I mean, we were commenting earlier on Crepo tweeting and talking about how, you know, if they keep it up, they're in line for relegation. And for a lot of those guys, I mean, they've been around so long, I mean, it's probably going to mean retirement too, which is, you know, for some people good and for some people sad. But, you know, for EG, I feel like in a lot of the games they were holding their own, and they actually had a couple chances where they could have squeezed out a win. They could have taken advantage of a little bit, and they faltered a little. But, you know, overall, I mean, their picks are decent. You know, they're playing kind of meta champs for the most part, and you know, I just don't think they have they don't have anything special on their team that they can, like, they don't have that outstanding mid laner that they can put all their resources in. They don't have a bot lane that can shit on everyone. They're average across the board, and I feel like they just can't. They don't have anything that's going to drive them forward to beat some of these teams.
Well, for me, they're like the most solo queue-esque team in the LCS right now. I mean, yeah, I don't know. They just aren't. They have no good rotations that I really saw. Like you said, they had so many chances to pull games, like versus their TSM versus CG game. They held their own for literally like 35 minutes and then made like 5 bad calls in a row and lost the game. And it's like, you were playing fine for 30 minutes, and then who started talking that ruined it for you? It's like, they do not work well as a team, in my opinion, and I think that's more Crepo and Snoopy's, like, ego getting to them, since they're such big names, that they're probably taking over all the shot calling and all this stuff, and I just don't feel like they're doing it very well, like, at all. They're just not making the right calls. Like, they threw Baron, like, 3 times to TSM. Or didn't throw it, but, like, they would go to defend it, take a terrible fight, fend them off of the Baron, and then do that same fight over and over again. They went, like, 3 for 1, like, 3 times in a row. So, like, you can't do that to win a Baron fight. You can't give them 3 kills in a row, like, over and over. And yeah, their decision-making was just really poor. Like, their laning phase isn't terrible. They don't come out ahead on most of the games, but they went even in a couple laning phases, so, I mean, I don't know.
I think my big thing, to go off what you were saying, they don't have anyone spectacular, is their one lane that is out of the ordinary, should be spectacular, is Inox. He pulls the Kha'Zix top, he pulls the Nidalee top, he pulls these weird picks, but the problem is, he's never destroying with these picks. He's never doing anything that is like, wow, Inox should be playing these assassin champions. He should be playing these carry top laners. Like, it's not like when Zion Spartan pulled Jax and everyone was like, Jesus, like, we gotta ban that. No one's like, we need to ban that Kha'Zix top. Like, no one's worried about it.
His Kha'Zix looked good. That was the one thing that stood out for their games to me. He was so fucking tanky with just Randuins. He survived for like 20 seconds by himself in fights and managed to pick someone off. He was their only thing that went well this week, I think. Snoopy didn't do anything very impressive. Alltech, their new ad carry, looks okay. I think Crepo's decision making in lane looked like shit, and then Pobelter is. I mean, he's Pobelter. He's not contesting with any of the top mid laners right now. But then again, like I forget who they played. I think they have a really tough week. EG didn't they play like a lot?
Yeah,
of
they played some of the top teams. They had a rough week.
I mean, they more than almost any other team, they had the toughest week. Not saying anything because I don't think they'll pull a lot of games off people, but I mean, overall, they had not a very good week.
Yeah, I think if they get their shit together and week 1 doesn't give just a devastating blow to them, I think
Yeah.
I mean they can stand and bang with complexity. I think they can put up fights against Curse. I think they can, there's teams that they're going to be able to perform against. I just think when you get into the top teams who all have kind of all-stars in one or more roles, when you get an advantage like that, like when you're laning against Bjergsen in mid, or you have to fight against Dyrus or Balls in the top lane, and your laners are average at best, it creates an opportunity for those guys to snowball, and it's hard. Like there's just not much that can be done. So I think it's going to be a rough road for them. But my prediction for those guys is it's going to be they'll be the next XDG. I think they're gonna. I think they're just gonna get demoralized. They're gonna lose a lot of games, and I think a lot of those guys probably after this split will more than likely be done. At least playing on a pro level.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about that though is that if you're losing and you feel bad about it, that's fine. And I agree that you shouldn't sugarcoat it and make it something that it's not. But I do not think that like Crepo should be mass tweeting like, we're going to get relegated, or, we look like shit. These teams, we're playing like shit. These things, like, he needs to say it in a different way. Like, we need to improve. We need to work on this. We need to, or we're going to get relegated if we don't. Like, there's a way to word it, and Crepo's wording it in the worst way.
Yeah,
and I think it's embarrassing for his team that's really excited to be playing for them. And, someone like Altec, who's just really excited to be in the LCS in general, and he's going to be putting his best out there. His support that's going to be in lane with him every game is saying that they're trash. Like, that I wouldn't want to play in that environment. So I think that Crepo needs to take a step back and just be like, I do still have the rest of the season to play. It doesn't matter if we win or lose. I need to play the best I can play and work as hard as I can work, instead of just sitting back like, well, we're not going to go anywhere anyway. Like that's bullshit. That would be like, that's like fucking Fnatic drinking at All-Stars. It was stupid.
They did have the hardest week by far. They started the week out versus LMQ, then they faced Dignitas, and then they faced CLG, which, I mean, isn't the scariest team, but it's not an easy team, and then they finish out the week versus TSM.
Yeah.
So, the only team they didn't face was Cloud9. That's, like, top contending.
That was scary, yeah.
So they had a horrible week. But even so, if you're in the LCS, you should be at least contending with these top teams. You don't just because you're facing a top 4 team doesn't mean you lose the game. Like, Complexity took one off Cloud9. EG should have been able to close at least one, if not 2 of those games out for sure.
Yeah.
At the very least, be excited to be there playing versus these teams.
Sure.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll improve. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll change their attitude. Maybe they won't. But we'll see.
I see a pretty dim road for those guys, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
Agree.
Okay, I think that about wraps up NA. We're going to talk briefly on Europe and their standings, and kind of interesting. Europe is one of those regions where, I mean, they have top teams that always come out in the playoffs, but their regular seasons are always fucking insane. Like,
So weird.
Top teams drop games on a weekly basis, and so they never have the 26-3 Cloud9 records or like the crazy stuff. So a lot of those teams, they take games off of each other. So for Europe, EU current standings as of today, Alliance is at the top with a 3-1 record. I think overall KDA's put them at the top. But we have 3 teams with a 3-1 record for Superweek. So Alliance is at the top. Millennium is number 2, which I think was a surprise for a lot of people. I mean,
oh yeah,
surprised me.
And SK Gaming is number 3. So 3-1 records for those guys. Coming in with a 2-2 record on the week is Fnatic and Super Hot Crew. Fnatic, I mean, they're always going to be. They've never lost a split in Europe, so they're always going to be probably at the top there. Nothing too crazy or fancy out of those guys. They got a lot to work on. Super Hot Crew at the middle of the road. I think one of the biggest stories coming out of Europe is Alex Ich leaving Gambit, who went 1-3 on the week. I can't remember the name of their mid laner. Who recalls?
NIQ.
NIQ.
Yeah.
Nick.
It's Nick.
I watched a couple of their games, and he's no Alex Ich, obviously.
He looks like poo poo.
He looked okay. He looked okay.
They go 1-3, and a lot of tweets coming out of Edward and those guys saying, don't judge us too hard on week 1. We got a lot to work on and stuff like that. And then rounding out the bottom 2, also with 1-3 records, Copenhagen Wolves and Roccat, which is kind of surprising because Roccat put on a pretty impressive performance last split.
Well, all 3 of those teams though, should not be where they are. I expected the bottom of the table to be Super Hot Crew, Millennium, and Copenhagen Wolves, but definitely not Roccat at the bottom. And Gambit, with the Alex Ich change, I expected them to be low, but not that low.
Yeah.
So.
Well, they didn't have any teams going 0-4, and nobody goes undefeated. So it's kind of an even Super Week for those guys. I mean, that's not too surprising, and I think Alliance and Fnatic are probably going to be top 2 contenders. Maybe with SK Gaming in there. I think Millennium kind of caught a break a little bit in week 1.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, their jungler Continex.
Yeah,
he looks really good. I mean, he's getting his lanes ahead heavily, but at the same time, there's just no fucking way. I mean, I honestly just don't see them. Even after an impressive first week, there's no fucking way I see them top 4.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
I mean, they're good, but they're not freaking Fnatic will never let them beat them. Freaking Alliance is top of the tables right now. They look really good. SK finished, what was it?
3-1.
Yeah.
Yep, same record.
3-1. So, I mean, there's just no way Millennium is going to hold that. I mean, kudos to them. They played great first week, but I'm sorry to burst the bubble. It's not. There's no way. Not going to happen.
Sure.
So,
Andy P, any thoughts on Europe before we move on?
I think Millennium looks really strong. I think Alliance looks really strong. However, I will say Alliance, their one game that they lost was to Super Hot Crew, so that was confusing.
Yeah.
Millennium looks really good, though. I think Kerp looked great versus Gambit. He went 10-0-5, so that was pretty impressive. Kevin went 6-1-4. I think Kevin's always been pretty consistent, and now with Cotnex coming in and kind of getting the lanes ahead, it's giving them the ability to win some other areas. But Froggen has been absolutely spamming the Lulu pick.
Yeah.
Just ridiculous. He played it 3 times.
Let me put this out there. I like it. I mean, Froggen is one of those people who is very defensive. If he can't hit all 6 minions while doing damage to you, he will not do damage to you. And so having someone where he can just go, hey, I'm going to clear the whole wave and take absolutely no damage during it, that's his champion, dude. He looked so good on Lulu. Yeah. And Ziggs, for that matter. His Ziggs looked way better than it used to.
He played Lulu 3 times, and he went 10.5 KDA. He played it really well. I will say Fnatic, I think, some real work to do. I don't know what they're changing with their analyst, if they got a new one or whatever. They got something to work on, though, because they do not look at the caliber that Alliance, and even, it sounds so weird to say, but that Millennium does. Roccat is the one that confused me, that they were that low.
Yeah, I was so confused.
They have some interesting team strategies, and I think people are kind of picking up on it. They kind of lost their luster with the Morgana pick, now becoming widely known instead of just being, their pick.
Yeah, that was their thunder.
The rest of them, I was not very surprised with. Super Hot Crew going 2-2 surprised me when it was the loss the Alliance lost to him. But
Yeah.
Gambit, I expected to do terribly. Copenhagen Wolves, I expected to do terribly. I think Rocket was the only one that really confused me, but the rest I expected. I expected Alliance SK in the top for sure.
Okay. So not too many surprises coming out of Europe. I think teams are a couple small surprises, but overall pretty typical European LCS in my opinion.
There was some good upsets. I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, Super Hot Crew beat Rocket. 84% voted for Rocket in that game. They lost it.
Sure. Yeah, something went on with them first week. I don't know if they took too much time off or maybe they didn't come back for practice or something.
Well, I think it's just Super Hot Crew surprised people, honestly, because Alliance they lost versus Super Hot Crew too. I mean, it was a 91-9% vote, and Alliance lost that one too. So there were some upsets, but yeah, as an overall, it's the same old European LCS. I mean, European, it looks the exact same every time it's played. Honestly, there's not a lot of change that goes on in Europe.
Yeah, but you say Super Hot Crew looks really, really solid, and it's true. Well, they do look pretty good. But then again, they face like SK and Jesus goes like 8 kills on Italy and just stomps.
Well,
so
I'm not saying
they look back and forth. They looked like Cloud9. Like they had games where they did great, and they had games where they were just like, "What were you guys even doing?" You know, like it was weird.
But even that's new for Super Hot Crew.
That's true.
Because last season they never outclassed people. I mean, they won games by like 150 gold type things. Like some of these games, they came out and just obliterated people. So the 2 wins they had were convincing. So I was surprised by them. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be number 1 in Europe, but I'm just saying they looked fine in some of their games.
They looked better than they did for sure.
Yeah, they had more practice.
So they have room to improve, but they definitely have improved already. So.
Okay, good things. Let's move on to our last region in Korea and the OGN finals. We had Samsung Blue and Najin White Shield. I don't know who. I think White Shield the favorite.
Yeah.
I think
definitely the underdog.
They were definitely favored. And we got Samsung Blue winning the series 3-1. Pretty convincing. I mean, they were close games. I will say that. And for me, a lot of the kind of surprising. I think the things to watch in Korea is typically mid lane picks because they have just insane mid laners. I think the bot lane is it's so up in the air right now, but with who's strong and who's not. A lot of Twitch being played, and we saw the Kog'Maw in 2 games. I think it was two of the games, and it was insane. I mean, it looked
Deft pulled it twice. Yeah,
so
5-2 and 10 and 3-4 and 15.
I mean, the kid definitely went off on Kog'Maw. I think the mid lane, at least in that matchup, I think we only saw 4 champions. We saw Nidalee, Kassadin, LeBlanc, and...
No, we saw Ryze, TF, Kassadin,
TF,
LeBlanc, and Nidalee. So we saw 5.
So there were 5.
Let me just put this out there. Dade's roster change is probably the best of the entire year. He looks so much better on Blue than he did Ozone. It's insane.
Sure.
Like, I don't understand what was the big difference, but he looks so much better.
To me, it's the meta change. It's a lack of assassins. He's back on his TF. He played the game on Ryze. I mean, he went 11-2 and 8 on Ryze mid. Like, he was absolutely monstrous.
He even pulled Kassadin, though, went 9-3. He had a little bit of a weird build.
It was shaky, though. If you watch the game, it was shaky. He kind of picked up kills towards the end of fights. And
you guys see his build? He went Rod of Ages, Athenes, and Archangel Staff, and then went Ravenons. Like, that's
pretty excessive.
That's so much mana regen.
Well, and what's super weird about it is he didn't build his tier until 18 minutes.
Right.
Holy shit.
So, like, he had Rod and he had Athenes, and then he went Rabadons, and then finally, like, he was like, oh yeah, I have a tier. Like, and he never really built it. But he also, that game, it was really interesting. I'm surprised the CS is as close as it is. Goong at 314 and Dade at 280, because Dade was down 85 CS at one point in the game. He was doing a lot of roaming.
Yeah, they sent him to other lanes quite a
And
bit.
randomly he kind of picked up, and I didn't remember him getting that high, but
yeah, I think he picked up some huge waves in, I think, like bot lane and stuff like that to pick back up, which they needed to do. And I think they stalled the game for him to get those waves.
Yeah, to a perfect point. Yeah, for sure.
I think one of the problems too is that they didn't have any wave clear that game.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, their highest CS was Rise on save. He was down, let me see, 317 to 390 of deft. Lucian on Lucian. That's the wave clear for Samsung, and White Shield didn't have any. They had Nidalee for Siege, and then they had Twitch and Rise, which are horrible for sieging.
Yep.
And so their team comp just didn't make sense in that game.
I feel like Goong's picks in a lot of them were interesting to me. Like the Nidalee into the Kassadin was super confusing because he counterpicked Kassadin with Nidalee. Like he picked that.
Yeah.
The second game, the LeBlanc into TF was really good, and then they banned it the third one. But then again, he just went straight back to the Nidalee versus TF, which you're not going to win.
Game 1 and Game 3, they were in the absolutely exact same comp, except instead of Nami, they went Leona.
Right.
So they went an all-in team with a Nidalee. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why they're doing that? And and in Game 4, they tried switching it up, and once again, didn't work. They tried running Lulu top, and it went 2-8.
Well, and actually, Dottie got shit on in Game 4, and then randomly started just going ham.
Yeah.
He built a fucking what is it that builds into Banshee's Veil? It's the Spectre's Cowl. He built that before he finished Saris because he was so scared of Goong, and then randomly it was like, oh, I'm gonna pick up every kill in the whole game and just go off. Like,
he also Hextech Gunblade on Rise, which is really weird. He obviously, like, they're really good at stalling.
Yeah,
he should have went well at the Ancients in my opinion, but.
So what do you guys think of? We didn't see not a single game in the finals had top lane tank. I mean, Rise can arguably be a tank because he can get big, but
Aurelia, arguably, yeah.
I mean, she's kind of more brawler type, but
she's kind of on Jax's level. I mean, less tanky.
It was a trade-off between Rise and Lulu in the top lane, and what is that just those guys, those two teams, and what they like to play, or is that kind of what's happening in Korea right now? Granted, they are playing on 4.6 patch too. They're quite a bit behind everyone.
Yeah,
let me put this out there. Acorn finally got his Aurelia. Everyone's feared of Acorn's Aurelia in his Rumble, and he finally gets Aurelia, and he just shits on everyone. 6-2 and 11, but no, I think the picks are. I don't know. I think Korea over-prioritizes Lulu, in my opinion. Because if it's not used mid lane, it's used top lane. Every game, and I hate it.
I've listened to Monte Cristo's, his, analysis or whatever of why. And a lot of the time, the Lulu pick in the top lane is when you're lacking wave clear, which we see it in Game 1. They picked it with the Kassadin. So if you're lacking wave clear, especially because she makes someone tanky, so she can kind of get off with not being tanky. And then especially if you throw a Thresh in and you have a Lulu, then you kind of have the tanks you need.
It's nice too because they use it smart with Kha'Zix picks and stuff like that too. Someone who flies into the whole team to kill something, and then they blow it up with CC. And so they use it smart. I just don't like Lulu top.
See, I really like Rise top, but I like it versus
tanks.
Versus Renekton, versus Trundle, versus Shyvana. I like it versus that. I hate it versus Lulu.
Yeah,
you're never going to win that, ever. That would be like picking it mid, and you're going to get stomped. You're going to get out-harassed. You're not going to be able to scale up nearly as quickly, and then she's just going to slowly scale up with you, and you're never going to hit the machine gun Rise. It's just not going to happen. So
the problem is, too, is Rise comes in, and he's not necessarily like LeBlanc, where he takes 2 seconds and kills something. But he runs towards something, and he has really short range, and like you said, he throws machine gun spells. So you put 2 Lulu shields on that, and Rise is not tanky. He can be, he's off tank, but most of the time he just machine guns at something that has a 3,000 shield on it. And
Well, that's the thing is,
you
Rise
lost
gets
me,
tanky
so-
at 6 items. Like Dade's
Yeah.
Rise, that item build is perfect. You're tanky, you have regen, you have a crazy amount of damage. You're kind of exactly what you want. But for instance, if we take a look at Save's Rise in game 1, like that guy gets blown up right there. That is not a Rise that's going to come in and stomp your team. That's a Rise that's like, I'm going to do a moderate amount of damage. I'm going to take a moderate amount of damage, but I'm not going to be that crazy Rise. And especially when you throw it into a team comp where it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, I don't like it. So I think the Jax and the Aurelia picks in Korea are really good right now. I like them a lot, and I like the Rise top if it's against a tank. If it's against a Shyvana, if it's against a Trundle. Otherwise, I think go back to one of the tanks, or go back to one of the carry style like Aurelia or Jax. Because I hate the Lulu though. I personally.
so do I.
I think it's garbage.
It's not picks and bans though. Samsung just outplayed
Sure.
Nocturne. Like if we're being honest, like they beat them on every single thing. Their KDAs were higher, their gold per minute was higher, their minion kills were only like 13 higher over all the games, but still higher. Champion
Which is
kills,
actually
everything.
weird. Naj and White Shield beat them on CS almost every game. Like
Mm.
if we're looking down the line at the averages, like Naj and White Shield overall was winning. Goong,
And
I
Samsung
think,
was higher.
other than the last game, did really well versus Dade. I think Acorn, in my opinion, was beating Save, which is interesting because Save is known to be a really, really, really great player. I think he is, but I think he just got outplayed by Acorn. And I think Spirit played so much, for the most part, better than Watch. Other than Game 2, Watch went ham. But, like,
Yeah.
I think Spirit, if you look overall, is just so good throughout it. He did really good on his Feral Flare with Nocturne in Game 1. Game 2, they all just kind of fell behind. But and then Game 3 and 4, I mean, he's got like a 20 KDA, 30 KDA, like something ridiculous. 7-1 and 4 on Kha'Zix, and then he went 7-2 and 15 on Lee Sin. Like, he did really well. So.
The good thing about Spirit is he builds so fucking smart. I mean, you look at Game 1 on Nocturne. He went Feral Flare into Bilgewater into Randuin's Banshee's Veil. Like, he got Bilgewater, was like, alright, I want Blade of the Ruin King. He probably got hit by like one Nidalee spear and was like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore.
That's exactly what happened. I remember it happening. Exactly. He was farming his race, he got hit with a Nidalee spear, and then he went home, and instead of building the attack speed items, he went straight and got a Giant's Belt.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Monte Cristo said it out loud. He was like, obviously, Spirit is a little bit nervous about his health level right now. They don't have a tank on the team. He needs to build some health.
Yep.
And immediately after that, he built Randuin's. And it
Well,
was
he
like,
did-
you're playing
yeah.
smart, dude. You're playing
He
how
did.
you should be.
He did it on everyone, too, though. Like, Game 3, he played Kha'Zix. He went Elder Lizard into Brutalizer. He took a shitload of damage from Rise on one trade where he ganked. And so he built a Hex Drinker, and then he went Giant Spell, and then Last Whisper. Like, he kept going back and forth from these, like, half tanky items to half massive damage, and he built just so smart.
Well, look at his CS throughout the games. He beat Watch by like almost 50 or 60 every game. Like even on Lee Sin, he had 166 farm. Like that's kind of ridiculous. 180 on Kha'Zix, 150 in a losing game on Nocturne, and then 200 in game 1. Like
being a jungle main, his CS was fucking gnarly.
Very impressive.
It is very high it's not that it's really high, it's just that with his kill participation and it being that high is so impressive. Like his Lee Sin game, he was a part of 22 kills and he still had 166 farm. Like, where are you finding the time to do that? Like, unless the game was like 50 minutes long. I didn't watch that one.
I did.
But
that one was very impressive.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just
it was incredibly long. The game was very long, but at the same point, like
that's a great score.
That. Other than Thresh, he had the highest kill participation, and he still had that high farm on Lee Sin. And Lee Sin is someone who it's like, I've got 70 farm, I've ganked 5 times, like that is my power spike. Like you don't get much better than that. So for the game to go on that long and him to keep up with his CS keeping it pretty good and his his kill participation is just ridiculous.
Definitely.
His build in that game too, perfect. He went Elder Wizard and Hex Drinker for early game damage, and then he went 2 core items, Banshee's Veil and Randuin's, and he went Ruby Sightstone. He built absolutely 100% perfect. Like, there's not another item that would have fit that game better than what he did. Like, yeah, I don't know. They played...
Yeah, but in my opinion, the number one thing with White Shield in this was just... I think Gung fell back on the Nidalee because he's so good on it and he feels comfortable on it, and that's fine. But they did not fit their team in either game around a Nidalee at all. They had the opposite of a Siege team. They had an opposite. Their ad carry was Twitch both games. Their top laner was Ryze both games. Like, that is not a Siege team at all. Nidalee does not fit. Now, if you throw in Faker's Nidalee, where he's in Cougar form more often than he's throwing spears. So, like, there you can say, like, okay, we're playing a brawling type style game. We're looking for picks, but Goong doesn't play it that way.
No.
You never see Goong use Cougar form, and when you do, it's like, we've won the fight, I'm going to try to chase down and pick off one person. Like,
yeah.
But you never see him, like, in a team fight, flash Cougar form in to get an assassinate like Faker does. So it's just, I think overall, he had good... He did well. I mean, 2-2-4, and then he did 1-2-1, and he farmed well on the Nidalee. But he never did a big impact, and his team, it just didn't look like the pick he should have had in the games. And I think that's the thing that lost it for him was just Kassadin made a bigger impact in Game 1, TF made a bigger impact in Game 3, and then his LeBlanc shut down the Ryze, but Dade played smart, build smart, and then... I mean, the LeBlanc shitting on the TF game, too, that's the game they won, so...
Yeah, it's amazing to me, like, how quickly the Koreans are able to...
Adapt.
Pick up on a strategy that they're trying to deploy and adapt to it. Like, when some of the teleport gold cards that were coming out of TF, and when... God, I can't... Is it Heart? I don't know if it was Heart that was on Leona. And it was...
it was Gorilla.
Yeah, Gorilla on Leona, landing solar flares to absolute perfection every time that TF landed, and it was just like, those guys just know when it's coming, what's coming, and what they need to do to play against it. It's just, I mean, it's really impressive.
Well,
even Game 2, which is the Thresh, I mean, you saw Gorilla a couple times when TF landed. It was like he'd land the hook and LeBlanc would kill him before he got the...
Before he could do shit.
Well, that's just Koreans, though. They just don't fucking hesitate.
Right.
North Americans, they need, like, the reliance of their team coming in and helping, you know what I mean? Like, it makes them feel safe about it. Where Koreans, they're like, hey, if you're not on the same mental train that I'm on right now, then you're being left behind. Like, I'm throwing this hook and going in. I pray to God you're smart enough to come with me. And they almost all the time are, and, like, they don't second-guess anything they do. They go for it. If it doesn't work, they don't do it again. So I think they're playing good.
What we were talking about with Boy Boy was that he plays reactively and he plays it well. Koreans, every one of them plays reactively, and they have the best mechanics in the world. So it's like they hold their own throughout the lane, and then they react faster than the other person, and they make it happen. Like, they're so good at that. And it's like...
Their balance of when they know that they can't do something versus when, they make these insane plays where I feel like, a lot of the other regions are kind of lacking in that area. Other than maybe like China, because all they do is go balls to the wall all the time. But, the Koreans, they just have that ability to know and then know when they need to switch it on to make the big plays. And it's just, it's a totally different game to watch an OGN game versus watching an LCS game in Europe or NA. It just feels different. It looks different. The pace is different. Yeah, everything is it's on a different level. So
well, the things that I have to say about the Korean players, it's more so mid laners, but I mean overall Koreans compared to any other region, they know when they're in control of something. Meaning, like, when Faker's in the mid lane, when he's doing his laning phase, he knows whether he is winning the lane or not, and so he knows whether he can dominate the other person or if he has to hug back. Where, like, in NA, like you said with Void Boy, it's all reactionary. Where, like, hey, if you miss your W on LeBlanc, then I'm going to punish you because you don't have the way to get out and you didn't harass me. But in Korea, it's like, I'm like 50 gold ahead of you. I know I'm going to beat you in a fight.
Yeah.
It's like they know exactly what minute gives them a certain power spike, and they use that. And once that power spike diminishes a little bit, they play the lane differently. Where, like, a lot of NA and a lot of EU, more in EU, they play the same way throughout the game unless they go like 10-0. Like, they start the game this way, the mid game hits, they're still playing it this way. And then late game comes, and they just never push an advantage, or they never play safe enough. You know, if you're down a lot and you know that, play insano safe and just hug for a while. But if you're really ahead, shove that fucking advantage. Like, that's what Koreans do. They know exactly when they're so far ahead. And that's why, like, for instance, in game 4, Dade got shit on in lane, right? He comes out, ends the game 2,500 gold ahead of anyone else. He was, in his mid lane matchup, he was 7,000 gold ahead of his other mid laner. Like, he knows when he hits that spike, and his team knows, and they push it. The second it hits 35 minutes for a rise, and you got some core items, you know it's balls to the wall now, because you're gonna just shit on people. And they press that advantage better than any other region. That's why they're the best region. Because they know every detail about the game. They know when to do it. And other regions don't do that. And it's not a matter of they don't know when it is. They just play it out differently. Like Koreans, hey, I'm Rise, I'm 35 minutes in the game. I'm going to shove that down your throat. But you see,
not
like,
even that. It's like Koreans are like, I have an extra health potion lane. I'm gonna shove that down your throat.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I agree. See, when like they just know the smallest details, and they know how to press it. Like, if someone's chugging one of their 2 health potions, we're gonna harass you during that health potion. That way, it doesn't count for anything. You have to burn one to get your health back, because every time that's ticking, I'm doing more damage than it's ticking for. You know, like, they just know the smallest little things, and they know how to exploit them better than anyone. So.
All right, good stuff. So I think that wraps up Korea, and I think that's... I have one more, kind of a new thing that we're going to try and do on the show. I want to give a shout-out for the artwork that's on the background this week. Online, I went and picked up this artwork from an artist that goes by the name Phileria. It's Philiera. She has a lot of her work on Facebook, and so I picked up both of these images from her sketchbook. The one on the left is called Timo and a Beer, and the other one's just called Jax. So she has some really good stuff, but we're going to try and take either some different artwork or some different sketches, or we might even expand, and once we start getting some more people logged into the show, we'll take some people on that might want to come on and give us their 2 cents on some of these topics. So big shout out for the artwork. If you have something that you think might fit, or you have some artwork that you want to share and have it featured on the background of the show, let me know. Contact any one of us either by Twitter or come stop by the Twitch, send us a direct message, whatever the case may be. So lots of recaps this week. We'll be back next week on Monday, recording another new show, and hopefully we get some good action from LCS this week. So thank you so much for anyone that stopped by the stream. I'll have the video up on YouTube by the end of the day. I'll make sure to post links for you guys. From everyone here, I mean, we really, really appreciate you guys stopping by. Week 2 is in the books, so let's continue on. Love you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.